Okay, we're live. Welcome everybody to another training series. We're happy to have you here. We are going to go over some DWC, DWP architecture. Feel free to ask questions as we go through this. We actually have a sophisticated way to do item template mapping per zone, per DWC. So Mason will kind of go over that, walk through some code, and we'll see what questions they are. We're going to get into Victor's questions where he's working on section-related templates on the free site, and we already have a lot of this in place for the paid sites, so we'll be looking at that today. Okay, Mason, it's all yours.
Okay. All right. Let's start with the homepage for my AJC. Now the homepage is a DWP, and it follows the default 16 slot template that we had with Medley. So if you look at this, this is the old Medley template for 16 slots, and it also has the image scroll. And here we have the DWP for the homepage. And here are the 16 slots. So we got the lead slot, we got 2 and 4 here, and we got the third slot. This one is the image scroll, and there's also the slots 5 to 16. Now each one of these is a zone, and but what we just learned recently is that so for each zone you can restrict the templates per zone. So you can tell that I want a story because if you go back to Medley, you remember that if you've ever worked with Medley before, but we had this restriction of content type per slots per display class. So these 3 parameters work together to decide what you can display in each slot. So slot 1 is the lead slot, and there are a certain number of content types you can display, and for each content type there are certain display classes that you can pick for this content type. For example, video has a display class of active video only in the lead slot. If I go to slot 2, video doesn't have has different display classes. Or for example, the slots 11 to 16, these are usually list slots, meaning that you can only place lists inside them, and there's only one display class for them. So in order to mimic the same behavior in method, we talked to Salvatore, and he showed us Rob and I a way to do this by using DWCs and subtypes of DWCs. So for example, here you can see that slot 1, I just removed that, so I'm just going to go back to loading. Just going to refresh the page because sometimes that loading just stays that way. Weird complaint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag a few content types over just to show how we have this restriction per content type. So keep in mind that the restrictions are per content type per zone. So you can imagine how the web config file is going to get really nasty, but that's the only way to do it as far as we know. So here we have, oh man, So I guess I can't use this pane right now, the right pane here. It's not loading. But okay, so here what we have is a story. You can see it says a content type here. So a story placed in the slot 1, it has only access to these templates, or display classes if you want to use Medley terminology. So these display classes, they are mapped to their respective templates. So here's another story placed in slot 2, and slot 2 has only access to left photo and no photo. And if I go to image scroll, you should only be able to place image scroll types of content inside here, and so on. For slots 14, these final slots at the bottom, they're only list slots. So if you remember from what I showed here for Medley, these only allow for lists, and only top photo lead tees is the display class allowed for them. So if I click on one of these guys, actually I haven't set it up for 15 yet. It's for 11. Yeah, so 11. If I click on 11, you'll see that it's only allowed top photo lead tees bullets, which matches the same display class that we saw in Medley. Sorry. Now this not loading is going to make it a bit harder to play around, but so I'm going to show how we're doing this. First of all, we have different content types. So if I go to my web config file, you'll see, and by the way, this is the web config for paid sites. So if you ever need to take a look, you can always find it under conf under np paid. Okay, so let's start with a basic store. Well, the homepage first. This is the homepage DWP itself. Okay, so the homepage. I think a lot of people have seen how you can restrict different types, content types per zone. So for slot 1, for example, you're only allowed these item types. And this is probably not, this might be new to some people, but I've seen it used, so it's not new to everyone. Some people have seen this already. But the question is, what if I want to restrict a template per content type, right? So, for example, before you were able to only say, I want my zone, let's say my zone 1, to only allow for galleries, and that's it, right? Then you would say here in zone 1, in zone name slot 1, you would put in galleries, and that way you'd be only able to drag galleries into there. And if you ever try to drag a story, it would say, EOM type story is not, fit for this zone. But the question is, what if I don't want to restrict per content type per se, but per template per content type, meaning that I want to be able to drag a story into here, into this zone, and a story into this zone. But when I drag a story into this zone, it only gives me access to certain templates, not all the templates in there. And so the way to do that, the trick to do that, is to use subtypes. So I'm going to go down, and so keep in mind this, how you restrict types per zone for the homepage DWP. Now I'm going to go down to, actually I can do something here that I can keep that up here. Let me split. Okay, so I'm going to use, I'm still looking at the same file. So I'm going to keep this up here so you can remember that, how that works. And I'll go all the way down to how I've set up stories. Okay, so stories have one type usually, but what we have to do is we need to create multiple types for stories. And for each type of story, we restrict the templates that we assign to them. So let me just find, I can't find story here. Okay, there it is. All right, so this is our base story, right? Our base story will have, if it's, I mean, the base type. If we were talking about photos, it would have an extra EOM type of, photo. If it was a gallery, it would have a EOM type. But this is our base type story, and it has the base templates, usually the leaf page templates. And what you notice here is that it's extending some other stories that I've created. So this is extending story lead tease, story tease slot 3, slots 2 and 4. And then when I go up, you'll see these other stories that I'm extending and how I've defined them. For example, I'm going to go to story lead tease. So if I go to story lead tease, you'll notice that it's just a regular type, just like story itself. But it has the templates that I want only to be present in the lead tease if a story is dragged there. So remember content type and zone. These are the two parameters that are working together. So there is a story lead tease, and my templates are top photo lead and left photo lead. And this is when I go back to the zone here itself. When I drag a story into the lead tease slot 1, then those are the templates that it allows me to use. And you can do that with any other type of content type, other content types and templates as well. For example, story tease slots 2 and 4. These two only allow left photo and no photo. So if I go back here, I have a story inside here. So when I click on the templates, I'll see left photo or no photo, and so on. So I lost my. Oh, there it is. Okay, so now coming back to the home page and the zone and how I'm restricting access. If you look at slot 1, you'll notice that I only allow story lead tease to be inside the zone, inside zone slot 1. So this is where it connects the zone to the type restriction that you want. So here we're kind of restricting this to kind of a subtype of a story lead tease, namely. And now for slot 2, I am only allowing story tease slots 2 and 4. And if you look at 2 and 4, you'll see that it only allows left photo and no photo. And so on. Now, so this helps with restricting access to templates per zone. The other thing that we're doing with the page sites is that if you look at Medley again, you'll notice that each slot has some properties that are independent of the content that's inside, meaning that regardless of what I pick here for my content and what display class I pick, I can always give it a heading. And this heading has nothing to do with inside. I can pick whatever heading, and that heading should be part of the slot. So if I generate a page here, I render the page, I'll be seeing something like, let me just go back to the home page here for Chi3 MyDWC. Actually, you know what, to make it faster, I can just go to the main home page. So you'll notice that here at the top, that's the heading that is picked for the slots. So slot 1 has that heading, slot 2 has this heading, and this heading was picked manually. It was picked manually, and it has nothing to do with the story itself. As in, when I say has nothing to do, I mean that it doesn't come from the story itself. It was typed in manually by the producer that put this story here. So in order to get the same effects in method, what we're doing is we're allowing users to place DWCs inside these zones, because so far what I've shown you is when I drag a story directly into slot 1, for example. But if you want to be able to create a headline for this slot 1, Um, Method doesn't give us any way of setting properties for zones. For example, this zone, I can't give it any properties. There's no object properties or anything that I can, assign attributes to it. So in order to assign properties, I wrap my content, which is the story, for example, inside a DWC, and then place that DWC inside here. And you can see that with, for example, with the image scroll. So this image scroll